Hey YouTube, I wanted to bring you a video today about one of my hobbies that is both extremely enjoyable and also very practical. In this video I'm going to show you, it's going to be a little sped up, but I'm going to show you the process of roasting coffee at home just on a stovetop. It's really easy to do. It's like I said, it's pretty fun. You can use a pot and a wooden spoon like I'm using here. You can use a skillet and a whisk, all kinds of different items that you already have in your kitchen. And I have a gas stove here. Electric works as well. I've also done this on a grill. I've done it on a campfire, so you can do really any heat source as long as it's fairly consistent. Um, in this video, I'm using Bolivian beans. They're going to be done at a light roast to medium roast to really accentuate some of the natural sweetness, fruitiness, kind of floral notes and stuff that just are naturally in the coffee. And I prefer a light medium roast anyway, so it really works out. I use about a cup of beans, and you can use more or less at a time depending on the size of your pan. I typically buy my beans in a pound of uncooked coffee and of green beans, and I'll do about a third at a time, which is roughly a cup I've found. So again, you can change that up just depending on what you're using. I would also recommend wearing a glove or some sort of hot mat or prevention for your hand because it will get really hot throughout the course of this. I think I've just done this so many times, I'm used to it. Um, the only other thing I have here in frame is the colander, which I'll use at the very end to cool the coffee and halt the cooking process right away. And it'll remove the chaff, which is the papery stuff on the outside. So I buy my beans from a site called homeroastcoffee.com. Sweet Maria's is another big one. There's a lot out there that are great sources. I would look for a company with a wide variety and also one that gives either tasting notes or information about the region or the grower or something like that. It's educational. It's also kind of cool to try beans from all over the world. And the reason I do this type of coffee as opposed to buying coffee and whatnot is it's a lot more fresh. It's roughly the same price, if not cheaper, but you're getting much higher quality coffee and you're getting to roast it exactly to your liking. So it's cheaper and better. And it's also just a fun hobby to try. So anyway, I start this on medium heat. I'll modulate the heat a little bit throughout the roast, but typically you can just leave it on medium. I'll increase it if the beans are developing slower than I want, and I will decrease the temperature if I see scorching or if they start cooking too fast. The typical process should take about 8 to 12 minutes, depending on the size of the bean, the heat that you're using, the pan that you're using, etc. And as you'll notice, just consistently stirring, trying to make sure that the beans don't sit on one certain side for too long. That'll cause scorching, which you don't want. Throughout the video, you'll notice the beans start green and then they turn a little bit yellow, like we're seeing right now. They get really pale. Then they'll actually start to turn a little orangish or brownish, and that is the process of drying out and the moisture condensing in the middle of the bean, and then the sugar coming to the surface of the bean, and it turns orangey and brown as that sugar actually starts to caramelize. And as that sugar goes from caramel to burning and the oils come out, that's when you go from a lighter brown to a darker brown, darker brown, darker brown, and then eventually into the spectrum of black where the burning's happening. So at this stage, when the beans are starting to turn brown, you're really going to start smelling chocolate. Your apartment or your house is going to fill with that smell. You're going to get bread. You're going to get all kinds of different smells. Um, and the beans will start to steam. So roasting coffee is kind of a sensory experience where you're looking at the color change. You're smelling the different smells that indicate different portions of the roast, and then what's releasing from the bean, whether it's steam, which you'll feel before first crack and through first crack, or smoke, which is when the bean starts to burn. You'll experience that as well as you'll hear first crack. So that was the sound of first crack. It kind of sounds like popcorn. And that's the process of the moisture completely condensing in the middle, turning into steam, and then creating a lot of pressure and popping out of the bean. So that's that steam that's going to hit you in the face. It's going to feel like a sauna. You're also going to get these really deep smells of chocolate baking or a fresh loaf of bread in the oven, and it's going to make your apartment or house smell really, really great. But at the same time, a lot of steam, you'll notice, is going to start coming out of these beans. So I turn the vent on and start to suck some of that out. I also have a fan blowing it out into the other room to make sure the steam's not hanging out too much. First crack is going to last about a minute in this method, maybe a little more or less depending on your heat. And you'll hear the beans stop cracking at a certain point. That's going to be a full city roast, which is your first drinkable roast. I think typically that will be a little underdeveloped with this method because this is heat by contact as opposed to heating the air around it. So typically we'll let it go at least a little while longer before into more of a light roast or teetering on medium roast. This is a really important stage because from full city to a French roast is a pretty short process, so you really have to be careful not to overcook your beans here. If you like light medium, you want to only do another 30 seconds to a minute. You'll see oils start to surface, and that's when you know you're getting to medium roast. You'll hear a second crack, which is a smaller, more quiet crack. And the second that you hit the roast that you want, take them off the heat and start cooling them immediately. And I just run the wooden spoon as quickly as I can through there. The chaff will fall at the bottom, and it'll halt the roasting process. So again, this is going to be a light medium. It looks a little bit darker. That's a little bit of the light. It's also, coffee actually is a little darker than you'd expect. But storing the coffee is going to be super important. It needs to off gas for about 2 or 3 days. So if you have a coffee bag or I think you can buy new ones at the store, but it's going to be important to store it for 2 or 3 days, let it off gas, and then put it in Tupperware or something airtight. Coffee is going to maintain its freshness for about 10 to 12 days after roasted, and you want to wait to grind it until right before you use it, just to maximize the flavor. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have questions. Thanks so much. Did that.